And now, please welcome to the stage the 2013 Partner Program Chairs, Anne-Marie Bryant and Chris Ham.
Good evening. I'm Chris Ham.
And I'm Amy.
Did you say your name?
In a few minutes. I said I'm Anne-Marie Bryant.
I didn't hear it. All right.
Oh, no. You can cheer again.
That's Anne-Marie Bryant.
That's me.
In a few minutes, we'll be graduating the 2013 Partners class. The Partners program is a flagship executive development program that ACT-IAC brings together for the best and brightest of the federal government and industry. The Partners program started in 1997, and through the combination of partners and voyagers has graduated over 600 graduates or fellows over the ensuing 15 years. Tonight, we add 31 partners to that group.
The success of the Partners program comes from the unique set of leadership experiences that each of the partners brings. The government and industry participants are partnered together for the length of the program.
Partners and Fellows is an incredible network of support and resources. The Partners program is in high demand because the graduates that bring back their collective energy to their respective home organizations.
The program allows for off-the-record and honest dialogue on the challenges that are facing both industry and government. We're pleased to announce that this year applications have opened for the 2014 class, so check out the ACT-IAC website for details because it'll be a competitive process.
Anne-Marie and I would also like to thank our vice chairs for this year to make sure that the program was a tremendous success. Our vice chairs were Sanjay Sardar, NASA rockstar Deb Diaz, Herb Jefferson from ASI, and someone you all know just as Oz, but her real name is Laura Osbjornson. Without their support, we would have never been able to accomplish all that we did this year.
Chris and I would also like to thank the ACT-IAC professional staff, Jennifer McGeorge, she was really the glue that kept all of us together through the process. We also want to set a special shout out to the 2003 class of partners because I think there are like 10 of you here, right? There we go.
So it's now time to officially graduate the partners. This also marks the beginning. This is now the start where they will become members of the ACT-IAC Fellows community. Tracy's excited. So we're going to recognize all of the graduates. We will show photos of the pods that will represent 2 industry and 2 government partners that work together as a team throughout the program. We'll read the graduates' names by pod, and you can celebrate their graduation as we read their names. Each pod member stand as we read your names.
Okay, so we're going to get a picture up there in just a second. There we go. I don't even need to read the names, they're already celebrating. We have Ed Logan from Evolver. We have Naveen Vembar from GSA. We have Brenda Young from EPA. And David Branham from Lockheed Martin.
Ken Evans from GSA. Cassandra Bonnet from DMI. Chris St. John, our DAU representative. And Lucy Donahue with the longest company name in our class.
We have Angel Santa from OJP. Giovannina DiPietro from GDIT. Lisa Phillips from Library of Congress. And Adam Robinson from GovPlace.
Josh Scott from the Library of Congress. Jim Lockett from MITRE. Keith Reineman from GSA. And Randy Michael from ReliaTrust.
We have Ryan Madden from Dev Technology. Leo Wong from USDA. Melissa Forrest from Citi. And Ted Koslow from USDA.
Now our tripod of Brian Kendrick from TerraCore. Pia Scott from GSA. And Michael Lanier from Serco.
We have Thomas Cherry from Department of State. We have Michelle Rudnicki from IBM. Walter Bigelow from ATF. And Kimberly Gianni from Pragmatics.
Only 20 more pods to go. All right, last one. Adam McWilliams from EPA. Nick Skytland from NASA. Tracy Copy from some company named IAC Affiliate. And Roger Foster with Essentia. Congratulations. Each of you has now successfully completed the requirements of the Partners Program and are now ACT-IAC Fellows.
And now, please welcome back to the stage Rick Holgate and Jim Williams.
Good evening. Before we get started this evening with the last awards of the day, I would like to take a minute to recognize all of the 2012 ACT-IAC Award winners. Remember, they weren't able to stand up here on the stage, but we would like them to stand as I read your names. The 2012 Rookie of the Year was awarded to Rabia Sutton. The Government Contributor of the Year was Rory Schultz. And the Industry Contributor of the Year was Tom Suter. The ACT President's Awards were presented to Kathleen Turco and Marietta Allen. The recipients of the IAC Chair Awards were Molly O'Neill and Leslie Berry. The winner of the Janice K. Mendenhall Spirit of Leadership Award was Ann Reed. Again, we're sorry they couldn't have been up here on stage. One more round of applause, please, for all of them.
Well, this afternoon at lunch, we recognized several individuals who have made significant contributions to ACT IAC. We have a couple more to give, though. One of the perks of being ACT President or ACT IAC Chair is that we get to each give an award to someone we think has been especially deserving. We want to do that now. I've selected someone that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. She's been a colleague, friend, and mentor. She's also been an active member of ACT for many years. She's held numerous leadership roles, including the ACT presidency, and has really reinvigorated that role within the organization as well as the overall ACT leadership. And I'd like to say that this award took a lot of thought and really a lot of deliberation on my part, but I think when you understand who and when you see who it is that we've given this award to, I think you'll all agree that it was a blindingly obvious choice. But she is also the epitome of a dedicated public servant. She's committed to working every day to make government better. She has and is a leader in our community. She's been a strong advocate for public-private collaboration. She's a strong advocate for the use of social media, and she continues to be a strong advocate for ACT IAC. She is also, on a personal level, an exceptionally nice individual and colleague who always has a smile on her face and a warm word to share. It's my pleasure to give this year's ACT President's Award to Mary Davey.
Rick, I really think you should have said the queen of social media. It's now my turn to recognize an exceptional individual with the IAC Chairs Award. Like Rick, I selected someone who represents the epitome of a public servant. She has also been engaged in ACT IAC for a number of years. She's been a frequent speaker at our events and participated in planning a number of events. She contributed to our mobility forum earlier this year, and she's currently engaged in a series of conversations we have about developing senior-level women. She does all of her ACT IAC work in the evenings and weekends because she has a day job as a senior executive in a major department. Each day, she gives everything she has to make sure the department is operating effectively, and then each day, the department's ability to serve this nation is improved. This is a challenging time for all government employees who share this commitment. Despite those challenges, she continues every day to fight the good fight. And did I mention, she's also the government chair of this year's Executive Leadership Conference. It's my pleasure to present the IAC Chair Award to Margie Graves. can tweet about that now. We now come to the final award of the evening, the Janice K. Mendenhall Spirit of Leadership Award. In accordance with tradition, I would like to invite the previous Mendenhall winners with us tonight to come to the stage. This distinguished group includes Ellen Glover, please come up, Deirdre Murray, Bob Woods, and last year's winner, Ann Reed. To present this year's award, it is my pleasure to ask Bob Suda to please come forward.
We'll defend this goal. Right, yeah. Are you sure you're going to defend that goal, Bob? Good evening. I'm Bob Suda, and it's my honor to present this year's Janice K. Mendenhall Spirit of Leadership Award. Many of you probably don't remember Janice. She was not only a colleague of mine, she was always a close personal friend. I met her on our first day at GSA back in 1977. I watched her kids grow up. I remember she bringing her 5-year-old daughter to a finance offsite meeting. In fact, the Saturday before she passed, she called me to talk about her son, who had an upcoming baseball game that afternoon. He was very nervous about pitching that day, and she knew I had coached Little League and asked for my help. Janice was so dedicated to her family, both her kids and the GSA family. She bled GSA. Janice was an epitome of public service, an individual who committed herself to doing the best for the citizens, someone who believed in the value of those with whom she worked, and the advocate of a healthy partnership between government and industry. She was a role model for us all to be proud to emulate. Her 32-year career began at GSA as an intern at Kansas City. She came to Washington, D.C. as the first director of women's program at the Civil Service Commission. She later moved back to GSA, where she held numerous positions. At the time of her death, she was the Assistant Regional Commissioner of the Federal Technology Service in Atlanta. Janice demonstrated a lifelong commitment to people and worked to advance women and minorities. She served as the early president of the Federally Employed Women. She was also committed to a collaborative relationship between industry and government. She was a member of the Federal Executive Federation of Government Information Processing Council, which was the predecessor to ACT for GIPSY, and was active in many other professional organizations. She received many honors during her career, among them the GSA Meritorious Service Award in 1990, an agency honorary award from the Government Computer News in 1991, and she received the GSA Distinguished Service Award in 1994 and the Presidential Rank Award in 1999. Janice was truly a personal friend and an incredible colleague. Janice was known as a leader who stressed the importance of mentoring and teaching. She was committed to providing opportunities for every individual to grow and succeed. She worked relentlessly to strengthen relationships between government and industry. Through her words, and more so through her actions, Janice left behind a legacy of individuals who, many of you are in this room today, to continue to serve to the public and share her commitment to people. This year, we are honored to give the award to someone who embodies all of those traits and someone Janice would be proud to have win this award. This year's recipient of the Janice Mendenhall Spirit of Leadership Award is an individual with a distinguished record of success and contributions in both government and industry. He is a strong supporter of a healthy and collaborative relationship between government and industry. He has been a longtime supporter and a participant with ACT-IACT. His career includes time in both industry and government. He held executive positions at IBM and Unisys. He was also a Senate staff member and played an important role in drafting Klinger-Cohen. He was the first politically appointed leader of e-government and IT at OMB, a position later codified by the administrator of eGov and IT under E-Government Act of 2002. He led the President's management agenda around IT and featured in multiple incentives that remain in place today, such as the 24 Quicksilver Cross-Agency e-Gov initiatives, the Federal Enterprise Architecture, the cross-agency lines of business that paved the way for shared services implementation. After leaving OMB, he returned to industry. By now, I suspect almost everyone in this room knows who the winner of the award is. It is Mark Foreman.
Wow, I really appreciate this. It means a lot. I didn't know Janice very well. I knew of her. I met her a few times. She moved with that embodiment of what this means for government to use IT. And so it is very meaningful to me. I really appreciate the support from ACT and IAC and the award. Seems to me we're living in another one of these times like we saw in the early 90s, where there's so much technology opportunity and yet so much risk and so much disruption. We're grappling as a community on how to deal with the opportunities and the risk. And I know you're all dealing with things like, geez, should I tell the truth in these reports? Because oversight just seems to be a negative and not really helpful to managing these risks. Should I tell the government client that I can do this lowest price technically acceptable bid, but it's the wrong solution and it's not going to work, and thereby not get the work? You know, these issues are very difficult to grapple with one-on-one, but it's the things that we must as a community come together and figure out. And I really encourage people to stay involved in ACT, IAC. This is the forum. This was the forum certainly when I was on the Hill, when I was at OMB, and I think it's an important forum going forward in the future. We all know what's happening around us as a result of healthcare.gov and other things. We're going to need to come together as a community without the fear of reprisal to understand how we take advantage of technology to improve service to the citizen. I know you're with me. I appreciate your service to the citizens and the governments, and to me as a citizen now. And again, I thank you for this really remarkable recognition.
Now, please welcome back Margie Graves.
I would like to congratulate all of the award winners and the partners upon their graduation. Now, for this evening's speaker, I would like to introduce Jonathan Zittrain. He's a professor of law at Harvard Law School and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, professor of computer science at the Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and co-founder of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society. His research interests include battles for control of digital property and content, cryptography, electronic privacy, the roles of intermediaries within Internet architecture, human computing, and the useful and unobtrusive deployment of technology in education. He performed the first large-scale test of Internet filtering in China and Saudi Arabia, and as part of the OpenNet initiative, co-edited a series of studies of Internet filtering by national governments. 3 primary publications that result from these studies are Access Denied, the Practice and Policy of Global Internet Filtering, Access Controlled, the Shaping of Power, Rights, and Rule in Cyberspace, and Access Contested, Security, Identity, and Resistance in Asian Cyberspace. Please help me in welcoming Jonathan Zittrain.
Thank you very much, Margie, and congratulations again. I got to say, our table just swept the awards. That was very impressive. I knew I was in a good place when I sat next to Jim Williams, and I noticed his tie featured not just Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner, but DeForest Kelley as well. And by the time you're at the 3rd tier, that's real devotion as a fan of Star Trek. But I actually knew I was really in the right place as I think about just the past few minutes that we heard, which was family, relationship, leadership, yes, but team. The idea that we're in this for the long haul together and that this is, in fact, a community. And I just feel so honored to be a part of it and to have a chance to put in front of you all some things that I've been thinking about that are a little bit far afield from the usual worries over, say, cybersecurity, although I do spend a lot of time worrying about that. I thought it was time for new worries, because we don't have enough. So that's what I'm going to share tonight, along with some opportunities. And it also strikes me just how much what's already been talked about tonight has to do with making tough decisions, trying to figure out what the right thing is, something basically very human. And what I'm interested in tonight are ways in which the human is being harnessed by the information technology rather than the other way around. So how to get into this? Well, probably it makes sense to start with an experiment done by a grad student at NYU named Casey Kinzer in 2009. She got a little electric motor from Radio Shack, and as you can see in the picture, she put a little cardboard shell around it, put an all-important smiley face on the front of it, put a little flag behind it indicating where it wanted to go, turned it on, and released it on the streets of Manhattan. Now, you might think that what would happen would be they'd shut down half of Times Square and call in Homeland Security. But the smiley face made a huge difference, and instead, it turns out that New Yorkers and tourists alike came to the assistance of these robots to help them get to where they wanted to go. In fact, here is one robot's path through Washington Square Park, starting at the northeast corner, again, just going at a steady and constant rate, where over 42 people intervened over the course of an hour to help it get to its desired destination in the southwest corner, where it presumably bought some marijuana. Now, like most sociology experiments, my first reaction to this was, that's really interesting. And my second reaction was, I'm not quite sure what to make of it, although it vaguely resembles how internet routing works. I guess I'm not ready to start an alternative to DHL called leave the package on your front step with a smiley face and wait. But I do think there's a real lesson to be learned, the energy out there to be tapped from people of goodwill wanting to pitch in a little bit to do a good turn to somebody else. And there have been some books written about these sorts of things. Here are 3 of them. Here Comes Everybody by Clay Shirky, Wikinomics by Todd Tapscott, and We Think by Charles Leadbeater. These are great books, and in fact, in my own book on the future of the internet and how to stop it, I was curious about the power of distributed labor like this as well, and I was trying to come up with a good cover for my book. This is what the press suggested, the publisher, and I got to say I was not blown away by it. In part, as Margie mentioned, one of the other 3 books was coming out. It also featured a large hand saying stop on the cover of the book, and I thought that 1 was enough for books. So I told them to try again. And the publisher came up with this, a large traffic light and 8-bit font. I was not blown away by this either, even though the word stop is in the title. And so I figured I would actually try to make my medium my message, and I went to a site called worth1000.com, as in a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a site where a lot of people who have good photoshopping skills and nothing else to do go, and they engage in contests to see who is the better photoshopper. So I did a contest, good for about $200, called Pick the Cover to My Next Book. And I got about 24 entries from around the world, and this was the winning entry from Ivo van der Int in Holland, whom I've never met and never will. I thought it was really cool. The only problem is it was a little bit doom and gloom for my tastes. So I agreed to PayPal him another $50 if he could just make it, add a little hope. So one night later, he came back with this. That was the cover to my book. He didn't specify which was the right path, to be sure, but... So that got me excited about this prospect of just the masses out there being ready to help, but also, as it's shaping up, there may be some reason to worry. So I'm going to talk about a couple sample services that you may or may not be familiar with, and then try to play out what we might expect to see from them. So the first you may have heard of, it's several years old, is called Innocentive, started by the big pharma concern Eli Lilly, to make it possible to scale up on engineering talent without having to have it in-house and then either have too many engineers for the problem you have or too much problem and not enough engineers. So this is a marketplace for people that basically have PhDs and nothing better to do with them to find some work. And here's how Innocentive describes it. You basically have companies on the left, represented inexplicably by armless people, who send awards over to scientists arranged in It's a Small World After All style, who then, using a laptop from 1992, solve the challenges for the bounty. So this is sort of a vernacular of seekers and solvers. The companies are the seekers, and anybody out there can try to be a solver. Here's a typical kind of challenge. This is the challenge for $20,000 US. Can you solve the problem of browning in juice? It turns out at a conference, you might have those little juice things out there, like orange juice, and long before the expiration date, it turns brown. It's not orange anymore, and that's not good. The state of the art in this is to have a label that completely encapsulates the bottle from top to bottom, so you can't see its color until you're halfway through drinking it. They say we can do better, and if you think you can, $20,000 awaits you if you solve it. That's another example then of putting the problem out to the public to try to figure it out. Now, not everybody has a PhD, and not everybody is ready to spend $20,000. There are lots of smaller problems that could be solved as well, and a great example of that is offered through a platform called Amazon Mechanical Turk. The conceit of Mechanical Turk is that artificial intelligence ought to be really good by now, but along with my jetpack, it's just not here yet. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, what if we could, at exactly the place in an algorithmic process where you need that little spark of human understanding that a computer still can't do, what if we could funnel that piece of mind share into it right then? It would feel like artificial intelligence to the user, but there might be people behind it, and that's why Amazon calls it artificial intelligence. It's fake AI courtesy of people. And if you are a person with maybe no skills and nothing better to do, you can log on to Mechanical Turk and become a Turker. This is your patron saint, the Mechanical Turk of yore. He traveled the courts of Europe in the 17th century, 18th century. Amazing people, an automaton that played a mean game of chess. How did he do it? Spoiler alert, there was a little person stuck inside who actually had to do the work of playing the game of chess. So possibly the world's first actual sweatshop. And this is the patron saint of Mechanical Turk. So here is a typical Turk task. For 1 penny, you are asked to describe what you see in the picture. Now already you probably can't help yourself. You're thinking, box, box. The answer is yes, it's a box. You just earned a penny. And then you can move on to the next one. There's a little trucks in there, I think. You type trucks, great, here's another penny. And before you know it, you say, I like the odds on this slot machine, and you keep playing. And it turns out people like to Turk, to do activities like this. Now, for whom are they doing it? One surmises maybe that there is a search engine like Bing or Google, and they're encountering all sorts of images on the web all the time, and they want those to be search results when somebody types box. Might as well show this picture. How do you know it's a box? You can't ask a computer yet. Let's ask a person, pay a penny, and now we have our search engine up to date. That's an example then of a good Mechanical Turk task. Here's another one for 3 cents. What is the difference between vanilla and French vanilla? And it must be in your own words, only about 50 to 70 words. Who wants to know? I have no idea. What are they going to do with it? I have no idea. Answer the question, collect your 3 pennies, and move right along to the next question. So there are lots and lots of people who do Mechanical Turk. Are there Turkers among us? Is there anybody that's a Mechanical Turk person? No? One over there? Are you doing Mechanical Turk right now? He says, no? Okay, so lots of fun, lots of opportunity here. It turns out in the demographics, a lot of American graduate students are Mechanical Turkers. It shows just how little they get paid in real life, and I think how actual little positive feedback they get in the rest of their life as well. But in the meantime, it's our benefit. This is a little bit of an art project done called The Faces of Mechanical Turk, where the commissioner of the task, the seeker, said 50 cents to each Mechanical Turker who writes on a piece of paper why he or she does Mechanical Turk, takes a picture, and sends it in. So we have such answers as, I Turk for Christmas, and this one, I Turk to battle insomnia. I totally believe him. And here is, I Turk for drug money, just kidding. I don't believe him. And it just shows you that this is designed to be completely disintermediated between the Turker and the person wanting the problem to be solved. It's supposed to act like an AI, but this shows that within the honeycomb, the bees don't look very much alike. There's all sorts of different people with different motivations, and the brilliance of the platform is that it smooths all that out so that you can just have mind share ready when you have a task that calls for it. Now, what might that task look like? Generally, it's not going to be retail Mechanical Turk, like I have a problem, I'm going to come up with a Turk task and ask to have it solved. It'll be wholesale to an app, and then maybe I'll use the app, and I don't need to know that the app in turn is using Mechanical Turk. So this is a very real app called VizWiz, made by some colleagues of mine at MIT for the most part, and this is meant for people who are sight impaired and have a smartphone. So it runs on their smartphone, and they can use it to take a picture of something, speak into the phone and ask a question, and then wait and get an intelligent answer back. So on the left, we see, what color is this pillow? What denomination is this bill? Do you see picnic tables across the parking lot? The answer comes back no, saving the person a trip. What temperature is my oven set to? Etc., etc. The people with whom they have piloted VizWiz love it and work it into their daily routines. And again, think of it as just a machine adjunct, which is how, as they stack up the questions, they got this question, what does this test say? And I know, I'm waiting for the Turker to be, let me be the first to congratulate, console, to, all right, it just says no. I can't tell what the question has been asked and answered. So that's an example then of a wholesale use. Here's another one. It's called Soylent, the word processor with a crowd inside. How many people are familiar with the concept of Soylent? Anybody a Soylent fan? Soylent Green, yes, Soylent Green, the 1970s movie featuring Charlton Heston. As you can see from the picture, it's a musical comedy of a somewhat dystopian future in which everybody is really into these food pellets called Soylent Green. And Charlton Heston is the hard-boiled detective that sees that something is not right here. And about 3/4 of the way through the movie, he makes a terrible discovery. Spoiler alert. Yes.
Soylent Green is made out of people.
Yeah. He's so disappointed. So, anyway, that's a great name for a word processor. That's made out of people. So, how does it work? Well, we end up with a special add-in to Microsoft Word, and this add-in is a button called Shorten. And you can highlight a piece of text in your document, and you click Shorten. And while you wait, magically, the thing you've highlighted can arbitrarily shorten itself to whatever length it needs to be. Pretty cool, right? It takes about 2 minutes for this to happen for one paragraph. Quick question, if you have 10 paragraphs, how many minutes do you think it takes? 1? He thinks it takes less? 2, yes. Because obviously you could just break them up into more and more paragraphs and just have innumerable number of Turkers processing in a very complicated way. They don't just get the paragraph and they're told to shorten it. Some of them will just be shown a paragraph and say, where do you think would be the best place to try to shorten? And then other ones are told, try to shorten these sentences. And then third set of Turkers are told, between these two sentences, which do you like better? And only if all of that is done do you end up with something shortened. And I'm waiting for the first public company in its quiet period, about to do an IPO, working on that annual report that'll be the first one after it goes public, and it's just a little too long to fit. And somebody clicks that magic shorten button, alerting 300 to 500 people what's in that report as they helpfully try to shorten it. That is, it's a full employment act for lawyers to come. So, we also see ways in which, if you're doing something like shorten, you still are going to have to pay, because underneath, Turkers are being paid a penny or 3 pennies or something for each little step they do in the process. So is there a way to make that number go down so you don't have to pay as much? Well, this is a company called Microtask, which uses services like Mechanical Turk to take handwritten forms on the left and make them into digital forms without having to do optical character recognition on handwriting. And the way they do it is they divide the form into each field. So maybe one person gets Robert and another person just gets the word Johnson. So no personal information is compromised because it's so divvied up. And then it all comes back together after they digitize it. I mean, remember, the state of the art in this is to have prisoners do it. So it's, Anyway, they say at Microtask, we believe in the future computer games will play an important role in the distributed work industry. We will integrate micro work into online games. So players of Farmville, for example, could perform tiny game-like tasks. Instead of having to buy their virtual corn, they could earn it as part of the game. And somewhere in the world, Robert's name is being transferred from handwriting to print. And we see actually that games can be extremely motivating to people to do things they wouldn't even normally do. This is a game called Chore Wars. So if you are having trouble having your kids do their chores, you can sign them up for Chore Wars, and they earn points the more chores they do. I see this warrior earned 13 gold and a food ration for cooking dinner, a somewhat gelatinous tofu cube stir fry. So that gets people motivated, and we've seen this put to work by a brilliant computer scientist at Carnegie Mellon by the name of Louise von Ahn. He came up with something called the ESP game, and it labels images just like that original Mechanical Turk task. Now, how does that work? Well, 2 players who don't even have to be logged in at the same time and don't know each other and never will see a picture, and the name of the game is try to guess what the other person is guessing for that same picture. And when you agree on something, you both earn points, and in the meantime, Luis gets a bunch of labels for that, for which he didn't have to pay the penny, and they're somewhat accurate because they're labels that 2 independent people agreed upon. In the meantime, the people who agree upon it, they get their points. And as you can see, there's a thermometer filling up inexplicably from the wrong end as you earn your points at the bottom. And people really like points. They love earning points. What are the points good for? Absolutely nothing. But it doesn't matter. People want to have the top score. So Louise found that the ESP game, he calls it fun. I don't know, I might call it compelling. But he was able to generate over 4 million labels with 23,000 people playing this game, many of whom play over 20 hours a week. His thesis advisor at Carnegie Mellon actually insisted that he put on a block so that if you were visiting the game from a site ending in .edu, after 20 hours it would tell you to get back to work on your thesis and not let you play anymore, helping America in its competition with the rest of the academic world. So he just did the math and found out that just a few thousand people playing simultaneously could label all the images on something like Google in about a month, and that's a very easy threshold to meet. He ended up selling this game to Google. It's called Games with a Purpose. That's the name of his new company that does this, and that's part of how things are getting done. In the meantime, Louise moved on to greener pastures and came up with this amazing tool called Duolingo. It will teach you a new language. So if you speak English and you want to learn Spanish, you can go through Duolingo's process. It gives you little quizzes and puzzles as it teaches you Spanish. And as you earn various points, tons of ways to earn points and icons and badges as you go, incredibly complicated. As you learn, you get tested on more and more complicated sentences and demonstrate that you are capable of translating. And when you hit a certain level, they start giving you real sentences from real documents that somebody wants to have translated for which they do not know the translation. And congratulations, you are now a non-professional translator getting paid nothing to learn Spanish. Everybody wins. So that's pretty amazing. And these games can be made arbitrarily compelling by harnessing computer testing, so-called A/B testing. We don't know what's going to make the game compelling, so we'll just randomize things. Like this t-shirt store at Amazon has over 1 million t-shirts for sale, almost none of which have ever been manufactured, much less sold, and no one has designed them. Instead, an algorithm just cranks out. This is based on Keep Calm and Carry On. They just keep generating through random dictionary words in this store. So here's one: keep calm and bomb me, keep calm and bomb out, keep calm and bomb in. No human ever thought of that for a t-shirt. They're just randomized, and when you click buy, they are produced on demand, and then like, well, I guess someone wanted that t-shirt. Probably should move that to the front of the store. It's a little weird to see then IT in the service of generating the most compelling things for humans so that they in turn can work in the service of IT. And this is an example of an A/B tested Farmville runway. If you start playing Farmville, in order to do everything you want to do, you have to get this lost little lamb home to its mother. And you can see it has to get over these sticks and then cross a river. And each thing represents different tasks you have to do to get up to speed in Farmville. And they experimented with the size of the tear and the little lamb, and that's apparently just the right size to induce people to keep playing and provide their email to reunite the small lamb with its mother, who, as you can see, has a perfectly broken heart waiting for the lamb to return. Oh, so this is probably the most genius application of gaming to get productive work done for others that you would have no idea you were doing. This is a wonderful paper called Human Computing for Electronic Design Automation. EDA is the kind of field that tries to figure out how to cram the transistors ever closer on an integrated circuit. And there's all sorts of ways to do it, almost all of which don't work. And if you try to just randomize it, you'll never discover the needle in the haystack. But somehow the human mind has a yen for this, and the makers of this game figured out how to design a game where your job is to click on the periphery, changing these squares from yellow to gray. That in turn changes the colors of the balls in the middle. And if you can figure out through clicking enough how to get all the balls green you win points, and it will turn out, even to the surprise of the makers of the game, that you figured out how to move the transistors closer and save that company making the chips just a little bit more money. That's pretty cool, right? Yeah, all right. Yeah, so we're thinking about it. I get that. So here's now the first kind of law professory hypothetical of the evening. So get ready to emote in some way. Suppose that it is a Saturday afternoon, and your child is happily, safely off the streets at home playing one of the 4 games here on the PBS Kids site, having a terrific time earning PBS points. And just imagine that game number 4 is the make all the balls green game. And your kid is really good at it, and she's just like leveling up and having a great time, earning points. Points aren't good for anything, and somewhere in the world, there's an engineer at like IBM saying, looks like we've got another great solution from 7G. Does anybody have a problem with that? I don't see any hands up, really. How many people are comfortable with that? I see a few hands. How many people don't want to be called on in any way? Yes, no? Okay, you raised your hands. That was the wrong move. But, all right, just think about that. I saw nothing resembling consensus in the room on that question. We're going to come back to this question a little bit later. In the meantime, here's another kind of worry I have. This is another innocentive task. These are the folks that do browning and juice. And in this task, they are seeking pyrazolopyridinal diazonines. I don't know what they are either. But you don't have to watch too many episodes of Homeland to come up with something that might not be good that could be assisted by a dose of pyrazolopyridinal diazonines. And the creation of a market at arm's length where somebody can ask for it, somebody else can provide it, you can pay the money, you get the stuff, nobody asks any questions. Perhaps that's too efficient a market when formerly there was no easy way to get this very obscure stuff that required such expertise to generate. Now, there are other ways in which people know exactly what's going on and are being importuned to do it. Texas Governor Rick Perry in 2006, worried about border security in Texas, set up webcams along the border with Mexico and asked patriotic citizens to watch them all day long. And if you saw anybody trying to cross, there was a button to press that said, somebody's trying to cross. And if enough people not in touch with one another pressed the somebody's trying to cross button, then maybe it was time to send the authorities. And a number of people used it, and they're still up today in all sorts of different locations, inviting people to sit and watch the border. Now, that's been generalized in England, which around London has the largest proportion per capita of CCTVs in the world. Most of these closed-circuit TVs are in private hands, and they just generally record to digital tape. They're not like streaming anywhere live. Nobody's looking at them. It's just if something goes wrong, you can pull the tape, just kind of like every episode of Law & Order, and see what happens. So this guy got the idea for a company called Internet Eyes, where he would take people on the left here who are on their couch with nothing to do and let them watch live CCTV cams that normally just go to tape. And if they see anything go wrong, they press a button and they could potentially earn a reward. You see, you can sign up for free, it says, with no recurring fees to watch other people's cameras. It costs you nothing. And if you see the crime, it's literally you're watching a corner off-license store in the UK and you see somebody in aisle 3 boost that delicious British chocolate. You can press the button, the mobile phone vibrates at the front of the shop, and the shopkeeper knows before the person has left the aisle that there's something dodgy about that character. That's a pretty cool system, and you can see they've updated their website. She's off the couch. She's very excited. He's sort of radioing it in. And now we've got live Internet Eyes, and they say it's basically like in some of, they call them silver surfers. In some of the old age homes in Britain, people go to the computer terminal and they set up a checkerboard like Keynote or Bingo of feeds from around, waiting to see if any of them has anything going on. And if it's boring enough, if the crime rate is too low and so people stop watching, you can salt it with fake crime, just like occasionally putting a fake gun through the TSA and then boom, you know people are paying attention, and you can give them their just reward. Now, we had a low-tech version of this in the US about now almost 10 years ago. On April 20th, I don't know if that date means anything to anybody. On April 20th at the University of Colorado, inexplicably, all the kids decide to go to Furon Field and smoke pot. This was before pot became legal. I'm sure they're doing something else now. And the idea was you can't arrest us all. And the police said, maybe we can't arrest you all, but we can take pictures of each of you and then later put it up on the web with a $50 reward for the first roommate that doesn't like you to turn you in anonymously and get a prize. And that was the approach by the campus police. And we actually have seen a much more serious version of this take place next in the riots after the Stanley Cup went the wrong way as far as Vancouverites were concerned. They used it as an opportunity to riot, and somebody, not the authorities, set up a website just called Identify the Rioters. Here are the photos. If you know who they are, click this button. Here's another photo of somebody literally caught in the act of hurling a newspaper box into a car. Within about a day, somebody had identified him, and in fact, there he is on his Facebook page. I think he's wearing the same shirt. So now you can friend him and tell him how much you respect his work, and that's kind of new. And even more serious, after the contested national elections 2 cycles ago in Iran, a government-affiliated site put up pictures of protesters whom they could not identify and offered people money if they could figure out who they were. Now, there's going to be a natural limit to how effective this can be, because if you know the person, unless you really want to see them in trouble, you would have reason not to turn them in to the authorities. So now we get hypothetical again. How could we design, if we were the Iranian government, a mechanical Turk task that didn't require somebody to know someone to assist in the identification? Well, here's one possible way you could do it. There are approximately 72 million people in Iran. They all have national identity cards. What if you took the picture off the identity card, put them in batches of 4, and just made a big pile of microtasks that said, is the person on the left any of the people on the right? And I just did a back-of-the-envelope calculation and figured out that even if you didn't just restrict yourself to people in Tehran, you went for the whole country, you could, at prevailing mechanical Turk rates, spend about $15,000 to identify any arbitrary, unknown person amidst a collection of 72 million pictures. And the person making the identification would have no idea for whom he or she is working or why. But now, why pay $15,000 when you could pay nothing? So now here's the follow-up hypothetical that I promised. It's a Saturday morning. Your kid is happily on the computer playing and earning points at the Match the Face game. How many people have a problem with that? Okay, I got more hands this time. How many people don't have a problem with that? I got one hand up over there. Sir, we'll be talking to you later. Thank you for just send your business card along. How many people remain confused and somewhat upset? No, a few? Okay, that's about the right proportions. Now, of course, in this hypothetical, I've turned every dial to 11. I've tried to make it involving kids, non-disclosure, public broadcasting. I mean, everything that could upset somebody I have put into that hypothetical. If we had more time, we'd want to go through and figure out exactly what elements of it are the ones that persuaded you to raise your hand when you didn't before. And that would help us figure out, as these sorts of things come online, how really we should feel about them. To me, one element of it, though, the thing that really gets at me, I think, is represented by this episode from the Yale-Harvard football game of 2004. It was halftime at the game, and the Harvard pep squad went up and down the Harvard side of the field handing out colored construction paper and said, at the right moment, we're going to signal you, and you can hold up the paper like it's North Korea and signal the other side of the stadium with our special message to those damn Yaleys. Well, the moment came, and it turns out that the Harvard pep squad was the Yale pep squad in disguise, and when the signal was given, they all held up their colored papers. And that's what it said, with the resulting photo being called Crimson Spirit. And there's just something amazing about a message so large and unambiguous that you cannot see it, and that you're happily part of it, but not aware of what you are doing. But now here's another example of a use for Mechanical Turk that may start to worry us a little. Here's a task to write a positive 5 out of 5 review for a product on a website. It wants you to write as if you own the product and are using it. Tell a personal story of how great it's been in your life. And it's an amazing thing. This is Amazon Mechanical Turk, so it's like one arm of the Amazon octopus is now arguing Strangelove-esque with the other arm of the octopus, to really mix my metaphors inappropriately. But the basic idea is that can start online. And of course, I guess it's not like big news that online reviews might not be all that reliable. But what starts online can start to go offline. So during the great debates over the healthcare law in the summer, I think it was of 2009, there were a number of industry groups, both for and against the suggested law. This one was called GetHealthReformRight.org. It was against. And it did the usual thing of saying, if you agree with us, here's a form to write your member of Congress. And then it went a step farther. It went into the game Farmville and offered people virtual carrots for their farms if they agreed to write their real-world member of Congress objecting to the health care law. And that's a great example. It would only be more perfect if it was the farm bill they were being asked to object to get your fake carrots in order to argue against the real carrots. But that's an example then of making it so that what looks like public opinion coming to the fore is in fact something being ginned up through a platform of human computing, kind of like Mechanical Turk, that we don't see. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. I mean, this is not that long ago, but it's still very 20th century in my view. This is a Craigslist ad asking for people to attend a public meeting. You get $50 cash and a free lunch. All you have to do is show up to the meeting and wear a t-shirt, such as this, America Counts on Coal. And then a bunch of people show up at the meeting counting on $50 of free lunch, and I guess they get to keep the t-shirt too afterwards, so they could use it at other events. And that now is going into the real world, and it makes me wonder, for any given protest, I believe it will start to become difficult to know whether it is heartfelt or not. That you might be walking near something and just get a little opportunity on your phone, $50 voucher, to start yelling one of the following 8 slogans, record yourself doing it, and then submit it to earn your reward. And at that point, it becomes really hard to get a sense of public opinion. Now, the media is still going to want to cover these protests, so a seminar of mine came up with the idea of a crowd cam app, so that if you're walking near anything newsworthy, the word can go out, anybody with a camera, i.e. anybody with a phone, you will give you $1 a minute to go and start filming what you see, and in fact, we'll even be able to send you interview questions that you can look at as you're filming and shout out to the person there. And the person says, well, wait, who are you? Who do you work for? Your answer is, I don't know. Somebody's giving me $1 a minute. Now answer the question and I'll earn a bonus. Very, very strange phenomenon.
Sometimes the best moments in life are the simple ones. The things that pass us by without us even noticing. The small surprises. And the everyday experiences. At Momodo, we love the simple moments, but we hate forgetting them. So we started thinking, what if we could capture those moments and create a true photographic memory? What if we could build a camera small enough to never be in the way and smart enough to capture life as we live it? This is what we ended up with, the Momodo Life Logging Camera. It's small, light, weather protected, and takes beautiful 5-megapixel pictures. Just clip it on, and it starts taking pictures. Put it down or place it in your pocket, and it stops. It's that easy. And all the pictures are safely stored on Momodo's storage service.
Oh yes, what could possibly go wrong? But now let's be clear. Apologies if Momodo was a platinum sponsor. So just think for a moment what this service is. It's a bespoke camera. You put it on your shirt or somewhere, and it takes a picture every 5 seconds, all the time. GPS stamped, time stamped. And then later, you can go through your day and be like, that's the kitten I got in the middle of the, I had forgotten about the kitten. There's the kitten. And you can store that in the cloud, and then anytime you can see all of these moments. And if 5 seconds, what if something happens in between? You can buy 2 and stagger them. Then you've got 2.5-second intervals from your Momodo. So that's the idea. This went up on Kickstarter. How many people would want one of these? Wow, I see 2. Well, it turns out that enough people did that they were trying to get $50,000 raised in 30 days. 4 days into the campaign, they had raised $400,000 on Kickstarter from people who really want this camera. The only thing that might prevent this from being a success is that it's going to be overtaken by events, that there will be even more miniaturization. Imagine just having a cap with a camera in it, and you just walk around all day. Why make it pictures? Why not just get live video and audio of everything you do? It's just a storage question. And then when you get home, it docks to the cloud, and then at some point, somebody might say, you know what? I really need some video from this part of the street at this time in front of this health clinic. Does anybody in the cloud have it? And you'll just be notified, some of your wanderings last week are desired by somebody. Click here to earn 20 bucks. And I mean, right, make money slowly, but just walk around and earn money is the basic idea here, and you could see it happening. And we even see, this is a recent app, this is called Herd, the app. You put it onto your iPhone or your Android, and like a cockpit voice recorder, it just records the past 5 minutes of everything in a continuous loop. And if something should happen where 3 minutes into it, you're like, you know what, this is a keeper, you can press the button and it will record going backwards and then going forwards, everything like a cockpit voice recorder would if there were something of interest. And these kinds of apps, I think, are going to become integrated with things like Google Glass, or there's another one called Look-See over the end, where we'll just be constantly recording stuff and then banking it into the cloud, waiting for something to happen, or to have it be summoned by anybody else. And in an era in which there's great public concern about Big Brother, I don't know how to deal with basically this little sibling kind of thing, where any attempt to regulate it ends up being a direct regulation on a consumer who says, what do you mean I don't have the freedom to record what I see? This is my environment too. That's going to be, I think, very, very interesting. In the meantime, I think for all of some of the worrisome things I've pointed out, there are some positive ones that are on the flip side. So I talked to a guy named Ben Rigby who works for a micro-labor site called The Extraordinaries. It's kind of like Mechanical Turk, except you pay nothing. And why? Because only nonprofits commission tasks. So if you want to help a nonprofit, you can do some micro-labor during your lunch and not get paid, and it helps the nonprofit. And after the earthquake in Haiti, Ben remembered a conversation that he and I had had about the Iranian election hypothetical. And he said, wait a minute, there are people missing in Haiti. What if I set up a website where people can submit photos of missing people, then we can get a feed of photos taken after the earthquake of people, of survivors, and then we will ask people to see, are any of the people listed as missing, do you see them in any of the photos from the newswires and Flickr and elsewhere available after the disaster? He got tens of thousands of hits on his site of people sorting through thousands of images looking for one of hundreds of missing people. And out of all of that, they got approximately 5 leads. And for Ben, that was great. That was worth it because of the economics of this and the willingness that people were willing to do to help out so that that actually made it scalable. In the meantime, on InnoCentive, a couple months ago, this task appeared: mobile and novel chemical warfare agent destruction and/or neutralization. $50,000 if you can come up with a good way to neutralize chemical weapons. Who's asking? Not disclosed. Why do they want to know? I have a theory. If somebody solved that task, sounds like it might be to the greater good. And in fact, the wording of the task ended up looking suspiciously similar to a DARPA contract that was also out for an RFP. So people were starting to put 2 and 2 together. Finally, there's this rather unusual Mechanical Turk task for a whole $1, 100 times the usual price of the Mechanical Turk task. Your task is to do something kind in the world and take a photo of it. It's represented here by something called a kind machine, where little stick figures go into this funnel, get processed by gears, and hearts fall out the other side. Another lurid metaphor in this field that I don't quite understand. But in the meantime, you can earn $1 by going out in the world, doing something kind, documenting it, and then going to collect your prize. And my first reaction on seeing this was, the internet has reached apotheosis. Like, this is as good as it gets. We have found a way to turn money into love. The bigger the check you can write, the more kindness will simply happen in the world. And then my second thought was, the next time somebody does something kind for me, are they really doing something kind? Or are they just going around the corner to collect their reward? And I put that out as my last question to this group, which already represents such camaraderie, such kindness, and as far as I know, none of you is on the payroll of Mechanical Turk just yet. And for that, I say thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm given to understand we have maybe a minute or two for questions. Is that right? Somebody will come and haul me away if that is wrong. Margie is coming in this direction. No? So are there questions? And there are mic wranglers here ready to wrangle the mics to you. Who wants to summon a mic and save us? Yes, there we are.
Is this on?
It sure is.
Yeah. Are there known cases where Innocentive posts things for things that we would think are decidedly dangerous, like here's $50,000 to find a new chemical weapon?
Well, not yet. In fact, the example I just gave at the end was thought of as the first gotcha kind of thing. And in fact, Innocentive took that task down for neutralizing chemical weapons, even though that's for, even though I don't know who would be commissioning the task, but almost anybody commissioning it, it sounds like a pretty good purpose to me. So no, we have not, to my knowledge, seen anything like that. On the other hand, Innocentive, like many other intermediaries in many other spaces, it allows stuff up and only later reviews them if there's a stink raised in the blogosphere or among journalists or something. One interesting thought for something like that, or like Mechanical Turk, would be, well, how do you review all this stuff when there's such a volume of stuff going through it? At least on Mechanical Turk, the answer might be Mechanical Turk. You should have Mechanical Turks whose job it is to review the Mechanical Turk tastes, and it's basically Turkish turtles all the way down. So I don't know of anything yet, though, that's crossed that threshold. It seems to me, though, given the way markets work, only a matter of time. Other questions over here?
Good evening. Great talk.
Thank you.
Although I pretty much feel like we're screwed and this is going to end badly.
Then my work is done.
So here's your opportunity, much like your book cover,
yes,
where you asked the gentleman to come back with something more hopeful.
$50 in it for me?
1 penny.
Okay. I like.
Per minute of your response. What is your set of train tracks that veers away from the cliff? What's the hopeful statement?
So here's as far as I've gotten on the hopeful stuff. Step 1 takes a lesson from this very room, which is this room is engaged in a profession. It is not just people getting hired to do stuff. There is a shared sense of responsibility, of serving a good that isn't just exactly what you were asked to do, now you just do it. And if there's a way to establish in the kind of work that Innocentive asks for, there are other companies in the middle like LiveOps. That's a company that has you taking calls as if you were at a call center, but you can do it all from your laptop. And in the morning, you're answering the Burger King drive-through window, even though you don't even know what Burger King or where. And people are giving you orders, and you're typing it in, and it gets sent back to the Burger King. And then later, if you do well at that, maybe you're taking calls for the American Red Cross, possibly from somebody who ate too much at Burger King. So, cycle of life kind of thing. But all of this is to say, I think it is very possible for the best workers, so-called click workers, to themselves have a bit of a guild mentality And it's tough because there's always more if these guys bulk. But for the really good ones, you can actually see there's a website called Turker Nation. It's almost like a union for Turkers. And they came up with a piece of software called Turkopticon. And that's a plugin for Firefox that while you're browsing Turk tasks on Amazon, it will give ratings to the commissioners, the seekers of the tasks. Because it turns out on Mechanical Turk, whether you get paid is completely at the discretion of the task commissioner. If they don't like your work, they don't pay you. And what are you going to go, litigate over a penny? You could be spending that valuable time, maybe earning more pennies by less mean commissioners. So Turkopticon is a way of establishing some accountability that if you see somebody putting stuff up that's low rated by other Turkers, it gives you a hint not to do it. So that's an example of creating a sense of personal responsibility among the workers. I think, too, among these fledgling platforms like Innocentive, like LiveOps, like Mechanical Turk, they can come up with some industry standards, and we can do it the old-fashioned way that we know so well. The FTC can make noises, don't wake us up, don't make us send you a letter, we're going to send you a letter. And then they send you a letter, oh, you didn't listen to our letter, we're going to send you a second letter, and eventually it gets to an enforcement action. You could see that trying to induce this fledgling industry at the moment full of very eager and well-meaning young CEOs in Silicon Valley saying, all right, guys, why don't we come up with some minimum standards? And among them, there are already those who do it. There's one I didn't mention called Odesk. Odesk is for freelancers to reach them at arm's length. And Odesk escrows the money that you pay. And if there's any dispute, it isn't like Mechanical Turk. You get alternative dispute resolution. And they have a minimum wage that you're going to pay and things like that. And that creates a separate marketplace. So my hope is that there's a combination of technology and ethics that involve people starting to identify with what they're doing and taking it seriously, that in turn could enforce disclosure norms so you know what you're being asked to do, and then make a moral choice about how you feel about doing it. That's the best I've got so far, and none of it so far is we need to regulate the hell out of it. I'm chary of doing that right out of the box. I'm open to other ideas, too, if people have them. Maybe one more question? Over here, sorry.
Hi, Harold. I'm coming right over to the microphone.
Thank you. So I'm a little upset about the free labor thing going on, since we all work and but people get with their free labor.
You mean we could be out of a job?
We're out of a job. So, but more importantly, so your free labor gets exposed, and now you're a terrorist, but you don't know it. So, any ideas?
You're basically saying that the food is bad and the portions are small.
Yeah, because you can see how this can truly be abused by...
Yes.
Okay, I'm the Syrian government now, and I have an internet program to do a Turk machine, and I'm going to invent their new terror bomb.
And it's true that the internet has had patterns like this since it went mainstream in the late 90s. We went through the whole music and copyright thing again and again, and the basic idea was, well, wait a minute, they're just ripping this stuff from CDs, they're trading it online, nobody's paying for it. That's not fair, that's not right. They're getting it for free. The reaction to try to just sort of put the brakes on everything was like, and you probably see this in IT, where there's worry about people bringing their own devices in, and there's all sorts of strictures, but then they ignore it. If you tighten the screw too tight, you strip it, and you end up with people just doing shadow IT. And I think similarly it happened in music that, fine, you shut down Napster, somebody's going to invent Nutella. And you shut that down, now they got BitTorrent. It's going to get more and more decentralized and harder to go after, kind of like antibiotic resistance. So my hope here again is, I don't know if I have objection to people working for free. That's a really tough one, because if they want to do it, who's to tell them they can't do it? Now, if they're kids, maybe it's something different. It's just really weird to imagine asking your kid, are you playing that stupid game again? Make sure it's not doing any good for anybody, or you're not allowed to play anymore. That would be weird, right? It should be a bonus that it's helping somebody out, but I guess it's, well, you should get yours too. I suspect that this will come out a little bit in the wash. Free may be here as long as it's really fun to play that A-B perfected game. Whether or not it's Syrian terrorists inspiring our tasks, I think we can set up strictures at least so the most obvious marketplaces for this stuff have some form of vetting, some form of reputation, something to make the most sketchy tasks be outed or not allowed. Maybe even a bounty for anybody who can discover through research what task is not. So now we're applying innocentive to Turk to figure out Turk from innocentive. Maybe it's just me crossing the wires in Ghostbusters, but I'm hoping for the best. All right, I now have on my screen one more question, exclamation point.
We have it. We have it here.
We have it. Where is it?
We have it here.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir.
You've captured the need for novelty among humans. I wonder to what extent that need for novelty will make the production of small games impossible to maintain over the long term, so it's actually cost effective for people who need small tasks to be done to keep up with that rate. Secondly, I wonder if you can address the human need also for authenticity. If I know that you're being paid to be kind, I don't really appreciate your kindness.
Yes, it's true. I mean, I guess the only exception is the Boy Scout leading the little old lady across the street is doing it both for the merit badge and, I guess, to have inculcated certain societal norms. But I think you're very right that this boils down in a way to a question about who we want to be. And I was inspired for a while. I don't have the photo of it available, but Benjamin Franklin's diary. Benjamin Franklin had a diary, and he kept in it his perfect standard day. And it has it down to the minute. He arises at around 5 a.m. and he looks over his accounts. He has a lot of accounts to look over. And then he does some leisure, then he works, then he listens to some music. And he asks himself at the end of each day, what good have I done today for myself or for others? And it just seems like, wow, I mean, there's a reason the guy was at the top of his game and at the top of his aristocratic structure. He had a pretty good life. And I do wonder how much we each have our dopamine-inducing mercenary task. I see a subway car of the future where we're all in the car, and somebody is like working really hard on that $50,000 incentive challenge, and somebody 2 people down is earning a penny labeling images, and nothing else is happening. In fact, why are they even in the subway car? There's no reason to go anywhere. Boy, I didn't want to end on a down note. So my hope is that we will discover, this will be an opportunity to rediscover the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is stuff that you do because you have to do it, because it puts money in the bank for other purposes, other needs, and that's really important. Intrinsic motivation is stuff you would do even if you weren't paid to do it. And I won't ask the question here, but my suspicion is a great number of you would still be doing what you're doing even if you weren't paid, at least if there was a good reason you weren't being paid. And of course, I guess it's not so hypothetical with a number of people in this room, right? We thank you for your service. That's an example of extrinsic motivation, because there might not be a lot of people patting you on the back, thanking you for working for free while they yell at you, and maybe you'll get reimbursed and maybe you won't. That's the name of the game. And my hope is that the internet of the future is becoming one in which the threshold to create and to put stuff out there, to make a game that maybe goes viral, maybe doesn't, to make a music video without having to put $50 million of production into it, all of that stuff that we feel, oh, the internet's a wash and garbage, if it's intrinsically motivated garbage, you're not going to hear me complaining about it. And that sense of play and of leisure, I hope, can trump what otherwise might be these more calculated attempts to tweak us in one direction or another for some larger end that we don't even know. It's really up to us what we end up doing with that time. What about the cost effectiveness of maintaining constant pipeline of new miniature games to keep. I am aware that almost everybody in the room has no idea what the gentleman is saying because they can't hear him, not because they hear him and don't understand. But the basic question is, how do you keep the economics of this going? And the basic answer is, we are in the midst of A/B testing this thing. We absolutely don't have easy answers to those questions. My only hope is we'll be answering them together, and that in part, with government being something that's supposed to be above the fray and assisting every citizen and every person, this is a really fertile area to actually develop some of those games that draw in the citizenry. And we see it happening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Jonathan for that fascinating insight. Before we end the evening, I just want to mention a couple of housekeeping items. Tomorrow morning, we'll begin breakfast at 7 a.m. here in the Virginia room. At 8 a.m., we'll begin with a presentation by Stephen Van Rokel. That will be followed by Dan Tangerlini, and then the two will join together for Q&A, for what I'm sure will be a fascinating discussion. The morning will then continue with the CXO Town Hall, which will be hosted by Margie Graves, Casey Coleman, and Bernie Mazer. Following the success of last year, we will continue with the same format, which allows for collaboration among attendees and focus on discussion topics relevant to the tracks you attended today. Please remember that there is no advance sign-up required for the CXO Town Hall. Please also keep in mind that you don't need to worry about checkout and luggage tomorrow, as there will be a luggage holding area upstairs in the Allegheny room available all day Tuesday. We now have dessert in the Allegheny room and Colony room for those of you looking to relax and enjoy networking, conversation, and sports. Thank you very much.
Go Red Sox.